So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Paul. My career story is quite different to Elham's, but yeah, I started off at school. I did GCSEs and A levels through the course of the 90s. Graduated my high school with A levels in maths, design and technology, and ancient Greek, which is a bit of a weird combination that leaves you wondering, what do I do career wise with those three subjects under my belt at A level. At that point, that was 1994. Computers were the in thing at that point. They were just kicking off. Email was just it was just coming into fashion. So people were starting to use it. The universities were starting to use it, but we didn't have mobile phones in those days, and it was all very different to where we are today. So I ended up going from school to Exeter University to do a computer science degree there, and I graduated with a computer science degree. Again, kind of got to the end of that process and thought, what do I do with that? So, because the course was very theory based, so it's more about how what's the logic of computers, how do computers work, rather than the programming side of it. But obviously, when people see computer science on your educational CV, they think you are good at programming. You can understand how to program websites and build tools and do all this kind of stuff. So when I was looking for jobs and I joined agencies to get me in the door for interviews and stuff like that, they were always putting me forward for programming jobs. And I went to a number of different interviews with a number of different companies, all for programming jobs. And all of them came back to me and said, you're a really nice guy, you interview really well, but you're not strong in the programming field. We can't give you the job. And eventually what happened was that happened about 12 times. So I was getting a bit demoralized by this point, despite me telling the agencies I'm not a programmer, to stop putting me forward for these jobs. But I did end up in an interview with a small software company at the time called Reference Point. And Reference Point at the time were doing educational tracking software. So for like MVQs, GMVQs, GCSEs, whatever it happens to be, there's a set of modules and courses you need to go through. They had a set of software tools that would enable you to track your progress and allow colleges and universities to track progress of students through those particular qualifications. Again, went in for a programmer's job, didn't get it, but they came back to me two weeks later with a job they created specifically for me, because I interviewed really well, they liked me, and they created this role specifically for me. And that was a telephone support role. So literally customers would ring up if they've got a problem with the software, it's not working properly. I'd speak to them on the phone, talk them through how to fix it, or what the problem was, send them out new versions of the software if that was what we needed to do. And that was my first job. And I loved that job. I loved that company, what got on really well. And eventually they expanded into what I would call on-site qualification tracking. So smart card technology that we've all got today. If you go to big corporate companies, everyone's got a smart card on there that allows them to get into buildings, get out of buildings, and all that kind of stuff. For the construction industry, they use those cards to hold the person's qualification. So if they go onto a building site, for example, and they're doing stuff in a confined space, the site manager can check by scanning the card that they have the right qualifications to do that job at that time, and they're still within that window. So Reference Point was the first company to stand that up. And now Reference Point have recently, I think, just been taken over by Causeway as the single biggest provider of smart card on-site qualification things. And they put me on point to be project manager for the first rollout of that. So for me, that was a massive break in my career, gave me the insights as to what project management was for me, because I didn't really understand what that was at the time, but really got into it through my development through that company. BAA, which at the time, it stands for the British Airport Authority, for those of you that aren't aware of that, because I think it's disbanded now as a company, but they had 7 of the biggest airports in the country. So you had Heathrow, Gatwick, Stansted, Southampton, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, and Glasgow. They were all BAA airports, and I got a job. And Reference Point actually delivered the smart card solution to BAA, and I happened to work closely with the project managers at that company at that time, working with them to deliver that solution. And I reached a point after 8.5 years at Reference Point where I needed a change and wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I contacted those guys, my contacts at BAA, and they got me a role as a project manager at Heathrow. So I was based out of Heathrow, running a number of different types of projects, from asset management systems for fire stations, online recruitment tools, terminal simulation tools. If you go to Terminal 3 today and you look at the self-service check-in desks, where you stick your passports in to register and get your boarding pass, all that kind of stuff. The first generation of kiosks that went into Terminal 3 and Terminal 1 at the time and Terminal 4 was a project that I managed. And I got through the door. So I had to work with 26 different airlines at the same time because they're all shared kiosks. And they've all got to have their own software working at the same time on the same kiosk, same hardware. So you've got to manage 26 airlines, all with slightly different agendas, slightly different things they want to achieve, and build a plan that they all agree to and all abide to, pretty much down to the day when it comes to testing and stuff like that. So that was a major challenge. And that, again, all those projects I worked there, absolutely loved it. Sorry, it wasn't 8.5 years at Reference Point. It was slightly less than that. It was more like 8.5 years at BAA. Got that bit wrong for clarity. So anyway, I then, at that point while I was at BAA, I got married. I got ill. I had cancer for a while. And then as a result of the cancer, that kind of ruined the relationship I had with my wife at the time. So we ended up getting divorced. So there was quite a lot going on in that space for me personally. And after 8.5 years, and the divorce finalised, I met someone else, and that person was introduced to me by my cousin who lives in Edinburgh, weirdly, quite a long way away. So I ended up in a long distance relationship with this girl, and ended up at the point where we either ended up splitting up or I moved up to live with her. She had 2 kids, wasn't going to move back down here. So I moved up there, quit my job at Heathrow, got the job at Sky. It was based up in Livingston. And worked as a project manager for them within their billing systems area, technology area. So Sky TV, Sky Mobile, they have specific billing systems that work for them. I worked in that area for about a year, and then jumped out of that job into a program manager job at a company called Bodycote, who deal with kind of heat treatment and thermal processing for metals. So all the car parts and widgets and doors and stuff get treated at their sites and then get sent back to the manufacturers to be installed in cars or whatever happens to be. But it's a very technical, very manufacturing-based world. And they're in 26 countries with about 3,000 to 4,000 people across those, and they wanted to put a global ERP system that centralized and globalized their processes, their data storage, their information gathering, all of that kind of stuff. So worked on that program with them for 2 years, and then decided it was time for me to move back down to High Wycombe, which is where I am today. And I got my job at National Grid. And I've been at National Grid now for 11 years as of January. I'm now program director for them, and I've delivered a number of the most complicated IT programs they've had. I've built out at least six data centers from scratch, fitted them out, kitted them out, moved applications and services from old data centers to new data centers. One of which we had to get out of the data center because it was due to be demolished in March. A couple of years ago, we had to be out by February. We managed to do that on time, thankfully, because otherwise that would have been a disaster. And I am now leading a program that is upgrading one of the core networks we have in the company or in the country, which is worth, the value of that program is £300 million, and it's one of the most challenging things I've ever done, but absolutely love it. It's great fun, really enjoy what I do. One of the things I've absolutely learned through my career is you need a high-performing team behind you, or to help manage the work. You need to be able to identify what skills you need in the teams, how to communicate with people to get the right skills in the team. So, for example, you need completer finishers to get stuff done, but you also need ideas people. People are going to think in the blue sky and think, oh, we could do that totally different. No idea how to implement it, but the completer finishers will do that for you if you get the right blend in there. So you've got to build your teams in the right way. You need quiet people, you need loud people, you need a combination of people to create a kind of productive dynamic, if you like, is the phrase I would use. That there's tension in the team, so you don't always agree, but you've all got the common goal to get to where you need to be. And that skill is something I've developed over the years and worked out who works well together, who can do what's the best fit for these people in these teams to get the job done. So I've built that skill up, as well as then also building the skill up. But how do I communicate what's happening on the ground to the people at the exec level that need to understand from a stakeholder perspective what's going on, what the challenges are, what the escalations are, how they can help without them diving into the detail. And because once high-level people dive into the detail, the world goes a bit crazy and a bit mad, which isn't something anyone ever wants to do. So what I've done with my teams is I've built my teams in such a way that the personalities and the way they grow within my team is through coaching and mentoring them for them to build their own confidence up, to become self-sufficient and have the abilities to come up with solutions to the problems they come to me with, rather than just come with a problem and go, Nick, how are you going to solve that? Which does happen, clearly. Not everyone can solve every problem all the time, but I think it's important that people recognize the ability to say, I have a problem here. There's a couple of different solutions we can come up with. Nick, what do you think? Let's talk them through. And that kind of coaching, mentoring approach has really helped those teams become the high-performing, high delivery teams they are. And what I've realised in the last 12 to 18 months is I want to expand that further to beyond just the teams I'm working within in the company, but set up my own company as a coach and a mentor to help people like you guys on the call today to say, you've got careers in front of you. How can I help you get to where you want to be? What kind of conversations do you need? Even if it's a safe space that says, let's just talk things through. Talk through what your issues are. Let's understand where you're coming from, what you need, what sort of challenges you've got, and we can work through those challenges together. So that's kind of why Elham and I got in touch, and I agreed I was going to be a mentor for you guys and help as much as I can. That's basically why I'm here.